It was a hot summer afternoon. The sun was high in the sky, shining down like a big, bright spotlight. I could feel the heat on my shoulders as I sat in my favorite place, the driver's seat of my ice cream truck. My name's Mike, and I'm the guy who makes kids happy with cold treats. I've got the sweetest ride in town. It's painted white with pictures of popsicles and ice cream cones all over it. When I turn on the music, it jingles and jangles, and kids come running from every corner. They know me as the hero who brings smiles and yummy snacks. Most grown UPS like me, too. They wave at me when I drive by. Some even stop to buy a cone for themselves. It's a fun job, and I love it. But that day, not everyone was happy to see me. Nope, not her. Not Karen. She lived in a big, fancy house on Magnolia Street, right in the middle of the neighborhood I drive through every day. Karen wasn't like the other grown UPS. She didn't wave or smile. She didn't even look happy when the kids cheered for my truck. Instead, she came stomping out of her house like she was mad at the whole world. Her arms were crossed tight over her chest, and her eyes were squinty and mean. She looked at me like I was a big problem, like I'd done something awful just by being there. To her, I wasn't the friendly ice cream guy. I was a loud, annoying troublemaker she wanted gone. I'll never forget how she walked toward me. Her flip-flops slapped the ground with every step, loud and angry. She had this look on her face, like she thought she was the boss of everything. Karen lived in a neighborhood with lots of rules. It was one of those places where people pay extra money to have perfect lawns and quiet streets. They even have a group called the HOA, short for Homeowners Association. Karen was part of it. Actually, she acted like she ran it. She was always telling people what to do. Cut your grass, she'd yell at one neighbor. Your dog barks too much, she'd snap at another. Everyone listened to her because they didn't want trouble. But me? I wasn't scared of her. I had a job to do, and I wasn't breaking any rules. That afternoon, I'd parked my truck near the corner of her street, just like always. The music was playing, happy and bouncy. Kids were already lining up, holding their quarters and dollars, big smiles on their faces. I was handing out popsicles, red ones, blue ones, even the twisty rainbow ones they love so much. Everything was going great. The sun was shining, the kids were laughing, and the air smelled like summer. I thought it was going to be a perfect day. But then Karen showed up, and everything changed. She stopped right in front of my truck, hands on her hips now. She stared at me like I'd just kicked her cat or something. "What are you doing here?" she said, her voice loud and sharp. I looked at her, surprised. "I'm selling ice cream," I said, keeping my voice nice and calm. "It's what I do every day." But that wasn't good enough for her. "Not here, you don't," she shouted. "This is a quiet street, and your stupid music is too loud. You're bothering everyone." I didn't think I was bothering anyone. The kids sure didn't mind. They were giggling and licking their treats. Even some parents were watching from their yards, smiling at how happy their kids were. I tried to explain. "I've got a permit," I said. "A permit is like a special paper that says I'm allowed to sell ice cream here." I pulled it out of my pocket and held it up so she could see. It had my name on it, and a big stamp from the city. I thought that would make her back off. But nope. Karen didn't even look at it. She just waved her hand like my permit was a fly she wanted to swat away. "I don't care about your silly paper," she said. "You need to leave. Now." Her face was turning red, and her voice was getting louder. I could tell she wasn't going to stop. She was mad, and she wanted me gone. But here's the thing Karen didn't know, I wasn't the only one she should have been worried about that day. Something bigger was already happening, something she didn't see coming. While she was yelling at me, I noticed something strange. Down the street, a little ways away, there were 2 police cars parked. They weren't moving, and their lights weren't flashing. They were just sitting there, quiet as can be. I could see them out of the corner of my eye, but Karen didn't notice. She was too busy pointing at me and making a fuss. The cops weren't here for me, I knew that much. My permit was real, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. So who were they watching? What was going on? I had a funny feeling in my stomach, like something big was about to happen. Let me tell you a little more about Karen. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was the kind of person who thought she owned the whole street. Her house was huge, way bigger than anyone else's. It had white walls and tall windows, and a perfectly trimmed hedge all around it. She drove a shiny car and wore fancy clothes, even on a regular day. Everyone knew her because she was always complaining about something. If a kid left a bike in the yard, she'd knock on their door. If someone's trash can stayed out too long, she'd write a mean note. She acted like the neighborhood was her kingdom, and she was the queen. But queens can fall, can't they? And that day, I think her crown was starting to wobble. I've been driving my ice cream truck for 3 years now. I know this neighborhood like the back of my hand. I know the kids' names, their favorite flavors, even which houses have dogs that bark when I roll by. It's a happy place, most of the time. The streets are wide, with big trees that make shade on hot days. The houses are pretty, with flowers in the yards and swings on the porches. People here are friendly. They say hi when I drive past, and sometimes they even leave me a tip, a little extra money to say thanks. I like making them smile. It's the best part of my job. But Karen? She never smiled. Not once. To her, I was just a noisy guy with a truck she didn't want around. That day, the air was thick and warm. I could feel sweat on my forehead as I stood there, listening to Karen go on and on. The kids were still waiting for their ice cream, but they were quiet now, watching her. Some of them looked scared. I didn't like that. I wanted them to have fun, not worry about some grumpy lady. "Ma'am," I said again, trying to be polite, "I'm not breaking any rules. The city says I can be here." I kept my voice steady, even though I was starting to get annoyed. I didn't want to fight with her. I just wanted to do my job. But Karen wasn't listening. She took a big step closer, so close I could see the lines on her face. "I don't care what the city says," she yelled. "I say you leave, and that's final." I could have argued back. I could have told her she didn't own the street, no matter what she thought. But I didn't. I stayed calm. Why? Because I knew something she didn't. Those police cars down the block, they weren't just parked there for no reason. I'd seen them earlier that day, too, driving slow past her house. And the day before, I'd noticed a man in a suit standing across the street, writing something on a clipboard. I'm not nosy, but I pay attention. Something was up, and it wasn't about me or my truck. Karen thought she was in charge, but she didn't see the bigger picture. She was too busy glaring at me to notice the trap closing in around her. Let me paint you a picture of that moment. My truck was parked under a big oak tree, its branches hanging low. The music was still playing, soft and cheery, even though the mood was anything but. Kids stood in a little line, clutching their money, their eyes bouncing between me and Karen. The sun was so bright it made everything look sharp, her red face, her flapping arms, the shiny badge on one of those police cars glinting in the distance. A few neighbors had come out now, standing on their porches or peeking through windows. They were curious, too. Everyone could tell Karen was mad, but no one knew what was really going on. Not yet. I started to wonder about those cops. Why were they here? What were they waiting for? I didn't have long to think about it, because Karen wasn't done. She pulled out her phone, holding it up like a weapon. "If you won't leave, I'll make you," she said. She started dialing, her fingers moving fast. "I'm calling 911. They'll get rid of you." I raised my eyebrows. Calling the police over an ice cream truck? That seemed silly, even for her. But she did it. She pressed the phone to her ear and started talking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, hello. There's a man here causing a disturbance. He's got a loud truck, and he won't leave. You need to send someone right now." The kids looked at me, worried. One little girl with pigtails whispered, "Are you in trouble, Mike?" I smiled at her and shook my head. "Nope," I said. "I'm fine. Don't worry." I handed her a free popsicle, a red one, her favorite. She smiled back, but Karen saw it and got even madder. "See? He's distracting everyone," she shouted into the phone. "Hurry up." I almost laughed. She thought she was winning. She thought the police would come running to help her. But those cars down the street, they were already here. And I had a feeling they weren't coming for me. What do you think was going on? Why were the police watching? I didn't know the whole story yet, but I could tell something big was about to happen. Karen was loud and bossy, but she wasn't as smart as she thought. She was so busy trying to get me in trouble that she didn't see the trouble heading her way. It was like a storm cloud creeping up behind her, dark and quiet, ready to burst. I leaned against my truck, wiping sweat off my face with my sleeve. The kids went back to eating their ice cream, and the neighbors kept watching. Karen stood there, phone in hand, waiting for the police to save her. But the police were already here. And they weren't on her side. That's where the story starts to get really good. Something bigger was creeping up on Karen, something she never expected. I wasn't the problem that day, not even close. She was about to find out the hard way that picking a fight with me was the least of her worries. What do you think it was? Stick around, because you're going to love what happens next. So there I was, leaning against my ice cream truck, the sun beating down on me like a big warm hug I didn't ask for. The kids were still around, licking their popsicles and sneaking looks at Karen. She was pacing back and forth now, her phone pressed tight against her ear. Yes, he's still here, she yelled into it. This is an emergency. Send someone quick. Her voice was sharp, like a teacher scolding a kid who forgot their homework. I just watched her, keeping my mouth shut. I didn't need to say anything. The truth was, I wasn't scared. I had my permit, and I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. But Karen? She didn't care about facts. She cared about being right. And she cared about winning. The neighborhood was quiet, except for her. The jingle from my truck kept playing, soft and happy, like nothing was wrong. It was a funny contrast, Karen yelling her head off while the music danced through the air. The kids didn't seem to mind her much anymore. They were too busy enjoying their treats. A little boy with freckles waved at me, his orange popsicle dripping down his hand. I waved back and tossed him a napkin from my window. Thanks, Mike, he said, grinning. That's why I do this job, for smiles like that. But Karen didn't see the smiles. She only saw me as a big, noisy problem she wanted gone. Let me tell you more about my truck. It's not just any truck. It's my pride and joy. I've had it since I started this gig 3 years ago. It's old, but I keep it shiny and clean. The paint is white, with bright red and blue swirls around the sides. There's a big picture of an ice cream cone on the door, smiling with a goofy face. Kids love that. When I turn the key, it rumbles to life, and when I flip the music switch, that jingle starts up ding ding ding, over and over. It's loud enough to hear from a block away, but not so loud it hurts your ears. It's perfect for letting everyone know I'm coming. Most people think it's fun. Karen, though. She acted like it was a monster roaring through her perfect little world. I looked at her again. She was still on the phone, waving her free hand like she was directing traffic. Her hair was pulled back tight, and her face was all scrunched up. She wore a bright yellow shirt and white shorts, the kind of outfit that says, I'm important, look at me. But nobody was looking at her the way she wanted. The neighbors on their porches weren't clapping for her. They were just staring, some with little smirks on their faces. I think they were tired of her bossing everyone around. I know I was. But I didn't say that out loud. I just stood there, waiting to see what she'd do next. And then I glanced down the street again. Those police cars were still there, parked under a big tree so the shade hid them a little. They hadn't moved an inch. I could see 2 officers inside one of them, just sitting, watching. The other car had its windows up, so I couldn't tell who was in there. But I knew they weren't here by accident. Cops don't just park and wait for no reason. Something was up, and it wasn't about my truck. I started to wonder. Had someone called them before Karen did? Was there trouble brewing I didn't know about? My gut told me yes, and my gut's usually right. Karen finally hung up the phone. She stuffed it in her pocket and marched right up to me, so close I could smell her perfume, something strong and flowery. They're on their way, she said, pointing a finger in my face. You're done here, mister. The police will make you leave. I didn't move. I just looked at her, calm as could be. Okay, I said, shrugging. We'll see. That made her even madder. Her eyes got wide, and her mouth opened like she couldn't believe I wasn't scared. You think this is a game, she snapped. This is my street, and I say who stays and who goes. I almost laughed, but I held it in. Her street? Last I checked, streets belong to everyone. The kids were watching us now, their popsicles melting in the heat. One little girl tugged on her mom's sleeve and whispered something. The mom nodded and pulled her closer, like she didn't want her near Karen. I didn't blame her. Karen was loud and mean, and she wasn't making any friends today. I handed out a few more cones, strawberry for a boy in a baseball cap, chocolate for a girl with braids. Don't worry, I told them. Everything's fine. They smiled and went back to eating. I wasn't going to let Karen ruin their day. She could yell all she wanted, but I wasn't leaving unless I had to. The sun kept shining, hot and bright. I wiped my forehead with my sleeve again. My shirt was sticking to my back, but I didn't mind. I was used to hot days. Driving an ice cream truck in summer means sweating a lot, but it's worth it. I love seeing the kids' faces light up when they hear my music. I love handing them a cold treat and watching them run off, happy as can be. It's simple, but it's the best job I've ever had. Karen didn't get that. To her, I was just noise. Just trouble. Just a guy she wanted gone. But like I said, she didn't know everything. Those police cars down the street, they were the real story. I kept sneaking looks at them, trying to figure it out. They were too far to hear, but close enough to see. One of the officers got out and leaned against the car, holding a radio to his ear. He was tall, with sunglasses hiding his eyes. He didn't look my way. He was staring at Karen's house, her big, fancy house with the perfect lawn and the shiny car in the driveway. That's when I started to put it together. Maybe this wasn't about me at all. Maybe Karen had bigger problems than an ice cream truck. I thought back to the last few weeks. I'd seen little things that didn't seem important at the time. Like how Karen's garage door was always opening and closing at weird hours. Late at night, when I'd drive by after my rounds, I'd see cars parked there, strange ones I didn't recognize. Sometimes a guy in a hoodie would carry boxes inside, quick and quiet. I didn't think much of it then. People get deliveries all the time, right? But now, with those police cars sitting there, it started to feel different. Suspicious. What was she up to? Was she hiding something? Karen didn't notice me looking. She was too busy glaring at my truck, then at the kids, then back at me. You're ruining everything, she said, throwing her hands up. This is a nice neighborhood, and you're making it a circus. I tilted my head. A circus? I said. I'm just selling ice cream. She huffed, loud and dramatic. Don't play dumb with me, she said. You know exactly what you're doing. I didn't, actually. I was just doing my job. But she didn't want to hear that. She wanted someone to boss around, and I was the lucky guy she picked. The neighbors were still watching. A man in a lawn chair sipped his lemonade, shaking his head. A lady with a baby on her hip whispered to her friend. They weren't on Karen's side, I could tell. They looked annoyed, maybe even a little happy to see her so worked up. I got it. Karen wasn't easy to like. She was always telling people what to do, always acting like she was better than everyone else. I'd heard stories from the kids' parents how she fined someone for planting the wrong flowers, how she yelled at a guy for parking his truck too close to her driveway. She made rules just to feel important. But today, her rules weren't going to help her. I took a deep breath and looked at the sky. It was clear blue, not a cloud in sight. A perfect summer day, ruined by one loud lady. I could have packed up and left. It would have been easy, just climb in my truck and drive away. But I didn't. I stayed because I had every right to be there. And because I was curious. Those police cars, they were the key. They were waiting for something, and I wanted to know what. Karen thought she was calling the shots, but she didn't see the bigger picture. She didn't see the storm coming her way. The kids started playing again, chasing each other around the tree. Their laughter mixed with the jingle from my truck, making a happy little song. Karen hated it. She spun around and yelled at them. Be quiet. Can't you see I'm dealing with something? The kids stopped, confused. One boy dropped his popsicle in the grass and started to cry. That made me mad. I didn't like her scaring them. Hey, I said, stepping forward. Leave them alone. They're just having fun. She turned back to me, furious. "You don't tell me what to do," she shouted. "I'm in charge here." But was she? I didn't think so. Not with those cops watching. Not with whatever secret she was hiding. I crossed my arms and smiled just a little. "Okay," I said. "We'll see who's in charge soon." She didn't like that. Her face got even redder, and she opened her mouth to yell some more. But before she could, something happened. Down the street, one of the police cars started its engine. It was quiet at first, just a low rumble. Then the other one turned on, too. They were moving slowly, creeping closer. Karen didn't hear it. She was too busy glaring at me. But I heard it. And I knew things were about to get wild. What do you think was coming? Why were the police there? Karen had no idea, but I did. Something bigger was creeping up on her, something she couldn't stop. She thought she was the queen of the neighborhood, but her throne was about to fall. Stick around, you're not going to believe what happens next. It was a hot day, and the air felt sticky. I was standing by my ice cream truck, just trying to do my job. Then Karen came marching over. Her flip-flops hit the pavement hard, smack, 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 like little thunderclaps you hear before a storm. She looked mad. Really mad. Her face was all scrunched up, and her arms were swinging as she got closer. She stopped right in front of my truck and pointed at it like it was some big, ugly monster. "You can't park here," she barked. Her voice was loud and sharp, like a dog yapping at a stranger. "This is a quiet neighborhood, and your music is a nuisance." A nuisance means something annoying, and that's what she thought my truck was. I didn't get mad, though. I stayed calm. I'm Mike, the ice cream guy, and I'm used to people being grumpy sometimes. "Ma'am," I said, nice and slow, "I've got a permit." A permit is a special paper that says I'm allowed to be here. I pulled it out of my pocket. It was a little crumpled, but you could still read it. My name was on it, and there was a big red stamp from the city. I held it up so she could see. "Look," I said, "this says I can park here and sell ice cream." I thought that would make her stop. I thought she'd look at the paper and say, "Oh, okay, my mistake." But nope. Karen didn't even glance at it. She just shook her head and waved her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "I don't care about your stupid paper," she yelled. "You need to go." That's when she pulled out her phone. It was shiny and black, and she held it up like it was some kind of magic wand. She started pushing buttons fast, her fingers moving like lightning. Then she put it to her ear and started talking loud. "Hello, yes, 911, she said. "There's a disturbance here. Some shady guy in a truck is causing trouble. You need to come quick." Shady means sneaky or bad, and that's what she called me. Me. The guy who gives kids popsicles and makes them smile. I couldn't believe it. She was calling the police on me, right there in the middle of the street, with everyone watching. The kids around us got quiet. They were holding their ice cream cones, red ones, blue ones, even the swirly rainbow ones, and peeking out from behind their yards. Some hid behind bushes, and some stood by the fence, their big eyes looking at Karen, then at me. They didn't know what was going on. One little boy with messy hair whispered to his sister, "Is Mike in trouble?" His sister shrugged, her popsicle dripping on her hand. They looked confused, and I didn't like that. I didn't want them to be scared. This was supposed to be a fun day, not a yelling day. The parents were watching, too. Some stood on their porches, arms crossed, whispering to each other. A lady in a pink shirt leaned over to her friend and said something I couldn't hear. A man with a baseball cap shook his head, like he couldn't believe what Karen was doing. They weren't yelling like her, but they were paying attention. The whole neighborhood was starting to feel like a big show, and Karen was the star, or at least, she thought she was. Me. I didn't say much. I just leaned against my truck, my arms resting on the warm metal. I could have argued with her. I could have shouted back and said, "Hey, I'm not shady. I'm just selling ice cream." But I didn't. Why? Because I had a secret. Well, not really a secret, but something I'd noticed that Karen hadn't. Down the street, a block away, there were 2 police cars. They were parked under a big tree, hiding in the shade. Their lights were off, and they weren't making any noise. They were just sitting there, quiet and still, like cats waiting to pounce. I'd seen them earlier, before Karen even came out of her house. At first, I didn't think much of it. Police cars drive around all the time, right? But these ones weren't moving. They weren't chasing anyone or helping with a flat tire. They were just watching. And the more I thought about it, the more I wondered, who were they here for? It couldn't be me. I had my permit, and I wasn't breaking any rules. So what was going on? Karen didn't see them. She was too busy yelling into her phone. Yes, he's still here, she said, her voice getting louder. He's got this loud truck with annoying music. It's ruining everything. She waved her free hand around, pointing at my truck again. The music was still playing ding ding ding, soft and happy. I like that sound. It's what tells the kids I'm here. But to Karen, it was like nails on a chalkboard. She hated it. She hated me. And she wanted everyone to know it. Hurry up, she told the person on the phone. Send someone now. Then she hung up and stuffed the phone in her pocket. She turned to me, her eyes narrow and mean. You're in big trouble now, she said, smirking like she'd already won. I didn't smirk back. I didn't even move. I just stood there, leaning on my truck, looking at her. Okay, I said, real calm. We'll see. That made her mad. Her smirk turned into a frown, and her face got redder. What's that supposed to mean? She snapped. The police are coming, and they'll make you leave. She sounded so sure of herself, like she was the boss of the whole world. But she didn't know what I knew. She didn't see those police cars down the street. She thought she was winning, but I had a feeling she was about to lose big time. Let me tell you about Karen. She wasn't just any lady. She was part of the HOA, the group that makes rules for the neighborhood. Her house was the biggest one on the street, with white walls and a perfect green lawn. She acted like she owned everything, not just her house, but the whole block. She was always telling people what to do. Your grass is too long, she'd yell at one neighbor. Your car is too loud, she'd tell another. Everyone listened because they didn't want her banging on their door. But I wasn't one of her neighbors. I was just the ice cream guy, and I didn't have to follow her silly rules. I had my permit, and that was enough. The sun was high now, and it was getting hotter. I could feel sweat on my forehead, but I didn't wipe it off. I just watched Karen. She started pacing, walking back and forth in front of my truck, her flip-flops still smacking the ground. Smack, smack, smack. It was almost funny, like a cartoon character getting ready to explode. You think you can just do whatever you want, she said, pointing at me again. This is my street. I keep it nice, and you're messing it up. I tilted my head. Your street, I said. I thought it belonged to everyone. That was the wrong thing to say. Her eyes got huge, and she took a big step closer. Don't you talk back to me, she shouted. I'm in charge here. The kids were still watching. A little girl with pigtails hid behind her mom's legs, peeking out at us. Her ice cream was melting, dripping onto the grass. Mommy, why's she so mad? She whispered. Her mom shushed her and pulled her back. The parents on the porches were whispering again, too. I heard one say, she's at it again. Another said, poor ice cream guy. They didn't like Karen much, I could tell. She was loud and bossy, and she made everything a fight. But I didn't fight back. I just stood there, waiting. I knew something she didn't, and it was keeping me calm. Those police cars, they were still there. I sneaked another look at them. One of the officers was out now, standing by his car. He had sunglasses on, and he was holding a radio to his ear. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Karen's house. That's when I started to wonder even more. What was going on? Why were they so quiet? Usually, police cars have lights flashing and sirens going wee-oh-oh, wee-oh-oh. But not these ones. They were sneaky, like they didn't want anyone to know they were there. And they were close, just a block away. If Karen turned around, she might see them. But she didn't. She was too busy staring me down. I thought about saying something. I could have pointed and said, hey, look over there. But I didn't. Why? Because I wanted to see what happened next. Karen thought she was calling the police to get me in trouble. She thought they'd show up, tell me to leave, and she'd win. But those cars were already here. They'd been here before she even picked up her phone. That meant they weren't coming for me. They were here for something else, someone else. Can you guess who? I had a pretty good idea, but I wasn't sure yet. All I knew was that Karen had no clue what was coming her way. She kept talking, her voice loud and fast. "You're a nobody," she said. "You think you can roll in here with your noisy truck and ruin my day? Well, you're wrong. The police will fix this." She crossed her arms and stood there, waiting. She looked so proud, like she'd just solved a big problem. The kids started whispering to each other. "Is Mike going to jail?" one asked. "No way," another said. "He's nice." I smiled at them, just a little. "Don't worry," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." That made Karen huff. "Oh, you'll see," she said. "Just wait." The air felt heavy now, like before a rain. The sun was still shining, but something big was coming. I could feel it. The neighbors were watching closer, leaning forward on their porches. The kids were holding their ice cream tight, like they didn't want to miss anything. My truck's music kept playing ding 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 like a happy little song that didn't match what was happening. Karen stood there, smirking again, thinking she'd beat me. But she didn't see those police cars. She didn't know they were watching her, not me. She thought she was winning, but she was so wrong. I leaned back against my truck, feeling the warm metal on my shoulders. I crossed my arms and looked at her. She was loud, she was mean, and she was sure of herself. But I wasn't worried. Why? Because I knew something she didn't. Those police cars weren't here by chance. They were waiting for something, for someone. And I had a feeling it wasn't me they wanted. Karen thought she was in control, but she had no idea what was creeping up behind her. Can you guess who they were really here for? Stick around, because this is about to get good. Okay, so there I was, standing by my ice cream truck on the super hot summer day. The sun was shining bright, and the air smelled like melted popsicles and warm grass. I'm Mike, the ice cream guy, and I was just trying to make kids happy. But Karen? Oh boy, she was not happy. Not one bit. The minutes were ticking by, slow and steady, like a clock going tick-tock, tick-tock. And Karen? She kept talking, loud and fast, like she couldn't stop herself. She was mad, really mad, and she wanted me to know it. I pay good money to live here, she snapped at me. Her voice was sharp, like when your teacher yells at you for talking in class. She pointed her finger right at my face, so close I could see her red nail polish. "People like you ruin everything," she said. I didn't get it. Ruin everything? I was just selling ice cream. Kids love me. They run out of their houses when they hear my trucks jingle ding ding ding, smiling and waving their quarters in the air. How could that ruin anything? But Karen didn't see it that way. To her, I was a big problem, and she was going to fix it. I didn't say much back. I just smiled a little smile, not a big one. Then I turned to a kid standing nearby. He was a small boy with messy brown hair and a big grin. He wanted a cone, so I grabbed one from my cooler, a bright orange one, his favorite. "Here you go," I said, handing it to him for free. His eyes got wide, and he said, "Thanks, Mike," before running off, licking his treat. That made me feel good. I like making kids happy. It's why I drive this truck every day. But when I looked back at Karen, oh man, she was even madder. Her face turned red, like a tomato, and her eyes got all squinted. "You think you're so nice, huh?" she yelled. "Giving out free stuff doesn't make you special. It just makes more noise and mess." She waved her arms around, like she was trying to scare me away. I didn't move. I just leaned against my truck, watching her. She was loud, sure, but I wasn't scared. Why? Because I'd seen something she hadn't. Something big. Down the street, those two police cars I told you about. They were moving now, slowly, super slowly, like snails creeping along. Their engines were so quiet, you could barely hear them. They were getting closer, but Karen didn't notice. She was too busy shouting at me. "Now, let me tell you something. I'm no detective. I don't solve mysteries or catch bad guys. I just drive my truck and sell ice cream. But I've got eyes, and I see things. Lately, I'd heard stuff about Karen, little whispers from neighbors when I stopped by their houses. They'd say things like, she's up to something weird, or her house is always busy at night. I didn't ask questions, but I listened. People said packages came to her place all the time, big boxes, small boxes, all kinds of boxes. And not during the day, like normal deliveries. No, these came late at night, when everyone else was asleep. Strange cars would pull up, 2 cars I didn't recognize. They'd park for a few minutes, then zoom off. It was funny, you know? Like something sneaky was going on. I didn't think much of it at first. People can do whatever they want, right? Maybe she was ordering lots of stuff online. Maybe she had friends who liked to visit late. I'm not nosy. I mind my own business. But that day, standing there with Karen yelling at me, it started to click. Those police cars weren't here for no reason. They were watching someone. And I had a feeling it was her. Not me, not my truck, but Karen. She thought she was the big boss, but maybe she wasn't as smart as she acted. While she was ranting, I kept my eyes open. The cops were closer now, maybe half a block away. Their lights were still off, and they were still quiet, but I could see them better. One car had 2 officers inside, sitting still, looking out the windows. The other car? That's when I saw something new. A guy stepped out. He wasn't wearing a police uniform like the others. He had on a suit, black and fancy, with a tie and everything. He was tall, with dark hair, and he was holding a clipboard. A clipboard. Like the kind teachers used to check names off a list. He stood there, staring right at Karen's house, not my truck, not me, but her big, fancy house with the perfect lawn. Okay, so picture this, it's a bright, hot day, and I'm standing by my ice cream truck. Kids are all around, licking their popsicles, and Karen's yelling at me like I'm the worst person ever. She's got her phone pressed to her ear, still talking to 911, telling them I'm a big problem. Her voice is loud and mad, cutting through the air like a siren all by itself. I'm just leaning against my truck, staying calm, waiting to see what happens next. The cops are super close now, those 2 police cars I told you about. They're right down the street, and I know something big is coming. Karen doesn't see it, though. She's too busy pointing at me and shouting. But then bam, everything changes. Suddenly, a siren chirps. It's just one quick sound, WOOP, sharp and loud, like a bird squawking in the quiet. It's not a long siren, not the kind that goes on and on like in the movies. Just one little chirp, but it's enough to make everyone stop. Karen freezes right where she's standing. She's mid-sentence, her mouth open, her phone still stuck to her ear. She looks like a statue, like someone pressed pause on her. Her eyes get big, and her hand shakes a little. She doesn't know what's happening yet, but I do. I've been watching those police cars, and now they're moving. 2 officers step out of the cars. They're tall and serious, wearing dark uniforms with shiny badges on their chests. Their boots hit the ground, thump, thump, and they start walking toward us. Then the guy in the suit, the one with the clipboard I saw earlier, he gets out, too. He's not a cop, not in a uniform, but he looks important. His suit is black and crisp, and he's got a tie that's straight as a ruler. He walks right past my truck, not even looking at me. His eyes are locked on Karen. The 3 of them, 2 cops and the suit guy, move together, steady and sure, like they've got a plan. "Ma'am," one of the cops says. His voice is deep and firm, like a teacher who means business. "Put the phone down. We need to talk." Karen blinks at him, her face all confused. She's still holding her phone, and her mouth moves like she wants to say something, but no words come out. She looks at the cop, then at me, then back at the cop. "What?" she finally says, her voice all shaky. "I called you. He's the problem." She jabs her finger at me, hard and fast, like she's trying to poke a hole in the air. She's pointing so much I almost think her arm's going to fall off. "He's the one you need to take away. Not me." The cop doesn't even glance my way. Not once. His eyes stay on Karen, steady and calm. "This isn't about him," he says, slow and clear. It's about you. Boom. Just like that, everything flips. Karen's face changes really changes. Her mouth drops open, and her eyes get huge, like two big marbles. She looks like she's seen a ghost. The phone slips a little in her hand, but she catches it, holding it tight. Me, she squeaks. What do you mean, me? She's not yelling now. She's scared. And she should be, because something wild is about to happen. The crowd around us gasps. It's like everyone sucks in their breath at the same time. Whoosh. The kids stop licking their popsicles, and their little hands freeze. The parents on the porches lean forward, eyes wide. Even the birds in the trees seem to go quiet. The suit guy steps up then, holding a piece of paper in his hand. It's not just any paper, it's a warrant. A warrant is like a special note from a judge that says the police can catch someone who's been bad. He holds it up high so everyone can see it. The paper's white with black writing, and it's got a big red stamp on it, all official and serious. Karen Thompson, the suit guy says, reading her name off the paper. His voice is loud but not yelling, just strong, like he's making sure everyone hears. We have a warrant for your arrest. Arrest. That means they're going to take her away. The crowd gasps again, louder this time. A little girl drops her ice cream cone plop right on the grass, but she doesn't even care. She's staring at Karen, her mouth open. The parents start whispering fast, like bees buzzing in a hive. What's going on? One says. Arrested, says another. Everyone's confused, everyone but me. I've got a popsicle in my hand now, a red one I grabbed from my cooler. I take a big bite and lean back, watching it all. Karen's face goes white, super white, like a piece of paper or a ghost. What? She shouts, finally finding her voice. This is crazy. I didn't do anything. He's the one. She points at me again, but the cop cuts her off. Ma'am, he says, holding up his hand. Stop talking. We've been watching you for weeks. Weeks. That's a long time, like almost a whole month. Karen blinks fast, like her brain can't keep up. Watching me, she says. Why? I'm just trying to keep this place nice. She's shaking now, her flip-flops wobbling on her feet. The suit guy steps closer. We know what you've been doing, he says. You've been running an illegal side hustle out of your garage. Illegal means against the law, and a side hustle is like a secret job. The crowd gasps again, bigger this time. Karen's eyes dart around, like she's looking for a way to run. What are you talking about? She says, her voice high and squeaky. I don't have any hustle. But the suit guy doesn't back down. He pulls out his clipboard and flips a page. Packages, he says. Lots of them. Coming and going at all hours. Strange cars showing up at night. We've got proof, pictures, videos, everything. Karen's mouth opens, then closes, then opens again. She looks like a fish out of water, flopping around with no words. That's not true, she stammers. I'm innocent. But the cop shakes his head. We've got enough to bring in the feds, he says. Feds are like super police, the big bosses who catch really bad guys. This wasn't just a little trouble, this was huge. Karen wasn't just a nosy HOA lady who yelled at people. She'd been doing something sneaky, something wrong, right under everyone's noses. I take another bite of my popsicle crunch and watch her. Her face is so white now, it's almost funny. She'd called 911 on me, thinking I was the bad guy. She thought the police would come and take me away, all because my truck played music and parked on her street. But here's the crazy part, they were already here for her. Before she even picked up that phone, they'd been watching her house, waiting for the right moment. She thought she was winning, but she'd walked right into her own trap. Isn't that wild? The kids are staring now, their popsicles melting in the heat. What's a side hustle? One boy whispers to his friend. Something bad, I think, his friend says back. The parents are louder now, talking fast. I knew she was up to something, a lady in a blue dress says. All those boxes, a man with a hat adds. They're putting it together, just like I did. I'd seen those weird cars, those late night deliveries. I'm no detective, but I'd noticed. And now it all made sense. Karen wasn't just mean, she was breaking the law. The cop steps closer to her. Put your hands behind your back, he says. Karen shakes her head fast. No. This is a mistake. You've got the wrong person. But the other cop pulls out handcuffs, shiny silver ones that click when he opens them. We don't, he says. We've got proof. The suit guy nods. You've been selling stuff you shouldn't, he says. Stuff that's not allowed. We caught you. Karen's eyes get wet, like she's about to cry. No, she says again, but her voice is smaller now, not so loud. The crowd is buzzing. Everyone's talking at once, kids, parents, even a dog starts barking from someone's yard. I finish my popsicle and toss the stick in the trash can by my truck. I lean back again, folding my arms. Karen's still pointing at me, even as the cop grabs her arm. It's his fault, she yells. He distracted me. The cop sighs. Ma'am, he's got nothing to do with this. That's right, I'm just the ice cream guy. I didn't do anything wrong. She did. The handcuffs go on, click, click, and Karen's arms are stuck behind her back. She looks so small now, not like the big, bossy lady she was a minute ago. This can't be happening, she says, her voice all wobbly. But it is happening. The cops start walking her toward their car, and the suit guy follows, holding that warrant tight. The crowd moves closer, trying to see. What did she do? A kid asks his mom. Something bad, she says, pulling him back. I watch it all, staying by my truck. Karen thought she was the queen of the street, telling everyone what to do. She thought she could call the police and get rid of me. But the joke's on her, they were already here, waiting for her. She'd been sneaky, doing bad stuff in her garage, thinking no one would know. But they did. The cops did, the feds did, and now everyone does. Crazy, right? I grab another popsicle blue this time and take a bite. This day just got a whole lot wilder than I expected. What do you think happens next? Karen's in big trouble, and I'm just standing here, eating ice cream, watching it all go down. Stick around, you're going to love the rest of the story. Alright, so here we are. The big moment was over, but things were still buzzing like crazy. The sun was still shining high in the sky, hot and bright, making everything feel like a movie scene. I'm Mike, the ice cream guy, and I was just standing by my truck, watching it all go down. Karen was in deep trouble now, and the cops weren't messing around. They just told her she was the one they were after, not me, not my little ice cream truck with its happy jingle. She'd called 911 to get me in trouble, but oops. They were already here for her. Crazy, right? Let's see what happened next. The cops didn't waste a single second. After they slapped those shiny silver handcuffs on Karen, click, click, they started walking her toward her big, fancy house. Her flip-flops dragged on the pavement, not smacking loud like before. She looked smaller now, not like the loud, bossy lady who'd been yelling at me just minutes ago. This is a mistake, she kept saying, her voice all shaky and high. You've got the wrong person. I didn't do anything. She was sputtering, like when you try to talk too fast and the words get stuck. But the cops didn't stop. They kept moving, one on each side of her, holding her arms tight so she couldn't wiggle away. The neighbors? Oh, they were loving this. People started crowding closer, stepping off their porches and into the street. Some held up their phones, the little screens glowing as they filmed every step. Get this, a man in a red shirt said to his wife, pointing his phone at Karen. No way, a lady with curly hair gasped, her phone shaking in her hand. Kids ran up, too, their popsicles dripping in the heat, trying to peek around the grown UPS. What's happening? A little boy with glasses asked his dad. She's in trouble, the dad said, lifting him up so he could see. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. It was like a big show, and Karen was the star, but not in a good way. The suit guy, the one with the clipboard and the fancy black suit, he didn't stay still either. While the cops walked Karen to her house, he went straight to her garage. That's where all the sneaky stuff had been happening, right? He pulled up the big white garage door creak and stepped inside. I couldn't see everything from where I was, but I saw him start pulling out boxes. Big ones, small ones, all kinds of boxes. They were stacked high, some with tape all messy, some with labels I couldn't read. He set them down on the driveway, one after another, thump, thump, thump. What's in there? a kid yelled, standing on his tiptoes. "SHH, we'll find out," his mom said, pulling him back. I stayed by my truck, watching it all. I grabbed a blue popsicle from my cooler nice and cold and took a big bite. Crunch. The sweet taste filled my mouth, and I smiled a little. The kids were still around me, so I kept serving them. "Who wants one?" I called out. Hands shot up fast. "Me. Me," they shouted, running over with their quarters. I handed out cones, red ones, yellow ones, even the twisty rainbow ones they love. "Thanks, Mike," a girl with braids said, skipping away. I winked at her. "No problem," I said. Even with all the drama, I wasn't going to stop doing my job. Kids deserve their ice cream, no matter what. Karen kept talking as the cops got her to her front door. "You can't do this," she said, twisting around to look at them. "I'm a good person. I keep this neighborhood nice." Her voice was loud again, but it wasn't strong like before. It was wobbly, like she was trying not to cry. The cop on her left, a big guy with a serious face, shook his head. "We've got proof, ma'am," he said. "You've been breaking the law." The other cop nodded. "Lots of proof," he added. "Pictures, videos, witnesses." Witnesses are people who saw what she did, and I guess they'd been watching her for a while. The suit guy came back out of the garage then, carrying another box. This one was open, and I could see stuff inside, little bags and bottles, things that didn't look like normal stuff you buy. "What's that?" a lady in a green shirt whispered to her friend. "I don't know, but it doesn't look good," her friend said back. The suit guy set the box down and turned to the cops. "It's all here," he said, pointing at the pile. "Just like we thought." The cops nodded, and one of them wrote something on a little pad. Karen saw it, and her face went even whiter, like a ghost or a sheet of paper. "No," she yelled. "That's not mine. Someone planted it." Planted means putting something there to trick people, but the cops didn't buy it. They opened her front door and took her inside. I couldn't see what happened next, but I heard her yelling through the walls. "This is wrong. You'll be sorry," she shouted, but her voice got quieter as they went deeper into the house. The neighbors stayed outside, still filming, still talking. "She's been hiding stuff this whole time," a man with a beard said, shaking his head. "I saw those cars at night," a lady with a baby said. "I thought it was weird." Everyone was piecing it together now. Karen wasn't just a mean lady who hated my truck. She'd been doing bad stuff, illegal stuff, right in her garage. I kept serving ice cream, watching from the corner of my eye. The suit guy and another cop started carrying more boxes out. Some were heavy, they grunted as they lifted them, and some were small, but there were so many. The driveway was filling up fast, like a big pile of secrets spilling out for everyone to see. "What do you think's in there?" a boy with a soccer ball asked me. I shrugged. "I don't know," I said. "But it's not good, that's for sure." He nodded, his eyes big. "She's in big trouble, huh?" he said. "Yup," I said, handing him a green cone. "Big trouble." The sun was getting lower now, turning the sky all orange and pink. It was still hot, but the day felt different, like the air was lighter without Karen's yelling. The cops came back out of her house after a while, and there she was, still in handcuffs, her head down. She didn't look at anyone, not even me. They walked her to one of the police cars, the lights still off, quiet and sneaky like before. The crowd got loud again, whispers turning into chatter. "They're taking her away," a kid shouted, pointing. "Wow," another said, jumping up and down. The cop opened the car door creak and helped Karen inside. She didn't fight anymore. She just sat there, staring at the floor, her flip-flops dangling off her feet. The door shut bang, and that was it. She was gone, locked in the back of the car. The suit guy walked over to the other cop and said something I couldn't hear. They nodded, and then he got in his own car, a black one parked behind the police cars. The engine started vroom, vroom, and they drove off, slow and steady, down the street and out of sight. Karen was gone. Just like that. The neighbors didn't leave right away. They stayed, talking and pointing at her house. "I can't believe it," a man in shorts said. "She acted so perfect," a lady with glasses added. The kids ran around, playing again, their ice cream melting in the grass. I stayed by my truck, serving more cones. "You're the best, Mike," a boy with freckles said, holding up his purple popsicle. "Thanks, buddy," I said, smiling. The street felt different now, quieter, happier, like a big weight was gone. A few days later, I heard more. The HOA, the group Karen was part of, they sent out a letter. It came in the mail to all the houses, and a neighbor showed it to me when I drove by. "Look at this," she said, holding it up. It said Karen was no longer in charge. That means she couldn't boss anyone around anymore. She was outdone. The letter didn't say much else, but everyone knew why. She'd been caught, and now she was paying for it. "Good riddance," the neighbor said, laughing. I nodded. "Yup," I said. "Good riddance." After that day, things changed. More people started coming to my truck, not just kids, but grown ups, too. "You're the hero," a man with a dog said, buying a cone. "Saw the whole thing," a lady with a stroller added, smiling. They'd watched Karen go down, and they liked me for sticking around. I got extra customers, and the street felt lighter without her mean glare. Kids played louder, laughed more, and nobody yelled at them to be quiet. It was like the neighborhood woke up, happy again. Justice doesn't get sweeter than that, does it? Karen thought she could ruin my day, but she ruined her own instead. I kept doing my job selling ice cream, making smiles, and she got what she deserved. The cops took her away, her perfect little kingdom fell apart, and I got to watch it all with a popsicle in my hand. Pretty cool, huh? What do you think? Did she deserve it? Drop your answer below, and tell me what you'd do if you were me. Alright, here we are at the end of this crazy story. I'm Mike, the ice cream guy, and I was just standing there by my truck, watching everything happen. It was a wild day, super wild. Karen, that loud lady from the HOA, had her big meltdown right in front of me. She yelled and pointed and called the cops, thinking she'd get me in trouble. But oh boy, it turned right around on her. She fell hard, her downfall, they call it, and I got to see it all. It's funny how life works sometimes, isn't it? Let's talk about it. So, there I was, just an ice cream guy caught in the middle of all that mess. The sun was setting now, turning the sky all pink and orange, like a big popsicle melting up there. My truck was still parked under that big oak tree, its jingle ding 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 playing soft and happy. Kids were running around, laughing and chasing each other, their hands sticky from ice cream. The neighbors were still chatting, pointing at Karen's house, shaking their heads like they couldn't believe it. And me? I was just leaning against my truck, eating a green popsicle, thinking about how this day went from normal to nuts. Karen thought she was the boss of everything. She strutted out of her fancy house that morning like she owned the whole street. She yelled at me, told me I didn't belong, and waved her phone around like it was a magic wand. She was loud, super loud, the kind of loud that makes your ears hurt. She thought she controlled everything, like a queen on a throne. "Get out," she'd shouted. "This is my place." But here's the funny part, the loudest people, the ones who act like they're in charge, sometimes they're hiding stuff. Big stuff. Secrets they don't want anyone to know. And Karen? She had secrets, huge ones. Those boxes in her garage, those sneaky cars at night, all that stuff she'd been doing. It wasn't just little things. It was bad, against the law bad. She thought she could keep it hidden, yelling at me to distract everyone. But secrets don't stay secret forever. They spill out, like when you drop your ice cream cone and it splats on the ground. When her secrets spilled, she lost it all. The cops took her away, her fancy house got quiet, and her big bossy voice didn't matter anymore. She went from queen to zero, just like that. It's funny how life works, huh? One minute, Karen was standing there, pointing at me, thinking she'd win. The next minute, she was in handcuffs, her face all white, her flip-flops dragging. She didn't see it coming, not even a little. She thought she was smart, picking a fight with me, the ice cream guy. But I didn't fight back. I just waited, watched, and let it happen. And when it all fell apart for her, I was still there, handing out popsicles, doing my job. That's the thing, sometimes you don't need to yell or push. Sometimes you just need to stand still and let the truth come out. Maybe next time you see someone picking a fight, you should wonder, what are they trying to hide? Like, if your friend at school is yelling at somebody for no reason, maybe they're scared about something. Or if a grown-up is bossing everyone around, maybe they've got a secret they don't want out. Karen was loud because she was hiding stuff, those boxes, those sneaky deals. She thought she could keep it all locked up, but nope. It popped out, and everyone saw. So when you see someone acting big and mean, ask yourself, what's behind it? What don't they want you to know? It's like a game, spot the secret. I'm so glad you stuck with me through this wild ride. It was a crazy day, hot sun, melting ice cream, Karen's yelling, and then bam, the cops. I didn't expect any of it when I woke up that morning. I just wanted to drive my truck, play my music, and make kids smile. But then Karen came along, and it turned into this big adventure. Thanks for listening to me tell it. You're the best for staying until the end. I bet you're wondering what you'd have done if you were me, right? Would you have yelled back at Karen? Would you have driven away? Or would you have stayed, like I did, eating a popsicle and watching it all? Drop a comment below, tell me what you'd do. I want to know. Oh, and one more thing, keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's really going on next door. Like, that quiet house down your street. Maybe it's hiding something cool or something sneaky, like Karen's garage. People act all normal sometimes, but behind their doors, who knows? Life's full of surprises, just like this day was. I'm going to keep driving my truck, playing my jingle, and watching for the next big thing. Maybe you should, too. Watch, listen, and see what pops up. You might be surprised. So that's it, my story about Karen and her big fall. I was just an ice cream guy, doing my thing, and she thought she could push me around. But in the end, she pushed herself right into trouble. It's funny how it works, sometimes the loudest ones fall the hardest. And me? I'm still here, selling cones, making kids happy. Life's good when you don't let the Karens get you down. Thanks again for sticking with me. Tell me what you think, did she deserve it? What would you have done? And hey, keep looking around, you never know what's hiding next door. Karen didn't see him. She didn't see the cops either. She was too busy yelling at me. You're a disgrace, she said. This neighborhood is supposed to be peaceful, and you're ruining it with your stupid truck. She stomped her foot, and her flip-flop made a loud smack on the ground. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job." That was true. I wasn't here to cause trouble. I was here to sell ice cream and make kids smile. But Karen didn't care. She huffed and crossed her arms. Your job doesn't matter, she snapped. I say you leave, and that's that. The kids were still around, watching us. A little girl with pigtails held her mom's hand, her ice cream dripping down her fingers. She looked confused, like she didn't know why Karen was so mad. A boy with a baseball cap whispered to his friend, "She's loud, huh?" His friend nodded, licking a blue popsicle. The parents on the porches were watching, too. Some leaned forward, like they didn't want to miss a word. Others shook their heads, like they were tired of Karen's noise. I got it. She was loud and bossy, and not everyone liked her. But she didn't care about that either. She thought she was the queen of the block, ruling over everyone. But queens can fall, can't they? And I think her crown was about to slip. Those cops were getting closer slowly, so slowly, you almost didn't notice. The guy in the suit was writing something on his clipboard now, his pen moving fast. He kept looking at Karen's house, then back at his paper. What was he writing? What did he know? I didn't have answers, but I had a guess. Maybe those rumors were true. Maybe all those packages and strange cars meant something bad. Maybe Karen wasn't just a grumpy lady who hated my truck. Maybe she was in trouble, big trouble. She kept going, though. I've lived here for years, she said. I keep this place nice, and you're making it a mess. She pointed at the kids, then at me, then at my truck. Look at this. Sticky hands and loud music. It's awful. I looked at the kids. They didn't seem awful to me. They were laughing, running around, eating their treats. One boy dropped his cone and giggled as he picked it up, dirt and all. That's just kids being kids. But to Karen, it was like the end of the world. She wanted everything perfect, quiet streets, clean yards, no fun. And my truck? It didn't fit her perfect picture. I could have argued with her. I could have said, hey, the kids like me. I'm not hurting anyone. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, watching her, watching the cops. They were so close now, I could see the shiny badges on their uniforms glinting in the sun. The guy in the suit was talking to one of the officers, pointing at Karen's house. They were planning something. I could feel it. My stomach did a little flip, like when you're on a roller coaster and it's about to drop. Something big was coming, and Karen had no idea. She turned to the kids next. You shouldn't even be here, she yelled at them. Go home. This isn't a playground. The little girl with pigtails stepped back, scared. Her mom pulled her close and frowned at Karen. Leave them alone, the mom said, her voice firm. Karen spun around. Don't tell me what to do, she shouted. I'm fixing this mess. But she wasn't fixing anything. She was just making noise, lots of noise. And all that noise was keeping her from seeing the real problem. The cops were almost here now. I could hear their engines, soft and low, like a purr. The guy in the suit put his clipboard under his arm and nodded to the officers. They were ready for something. Karen thought she was the boss, the queen, the one in charge. But queens don't always win. Sometimes, they trip over their own crowns. And I think that's what was about to happen. She was yelling at me, at the kids, at the world, but she didn't see the shadows creeping closer. She didn't know her time was running out. What do you think she'd done? Why were the cops sneaking up like that? I didn't know for sure, but I had a hunch. All those whispers, all those late-night cars, they were clues. Karen thought she was the queen of the block, but her castle was about to crumble. Stick around, because you're not going to believe what happens next.